Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are working on our gas scooper. And there was a little bit of a discussion in the comments section that I would like to address here. Specifically, it's about the docking and how exactly this is going to work. Because we don't have RCS on this thing. That is correct. We don't have RCS on this thing. Essentially, all it's going to boil down to is we have no way to refuel the RCS. So eventually we're going to run out of RCS. It's not a good long-term solution. And in fact... Oh, hello. This is different. There was a KSP patch, not a ReStock patch. But I wonder if that's going to fix the solar panels. That'll be interesting. Regardless, as I was saying, there is not a lot of attitude control on this. As in, once we set a course with our ion engines, it is what it is, unless we completely kill velocity and reset the course. Now, that's something we can do. We're just going to have to fly straight and get it right. That's all there is to it. There's not really any other way around it. I'll just have to execute it correctly. RCS is kind of a crutch in KSP anyway. And kind of in the real world, too. I mean, ultimately, you don't need RCS if you just shoot correctly. At any rate, this thing is basically ready to go. However, there was something that I wanted to change last episode, and I can't remember for the life of me what it was. But I want to put this out on the pad and see if the change to the Gigantors that I noted there is actually fixed. That would be amazing if true. Like I said, that wasn't anything... There was no ReStock update, and I'm pretty sure it was a ReStock issue. But there was a KSP update. Okay, it's not fixed. Good to know. Very good to know. So let's go ahead and turn on unbreakable joints and no crash damage so that that's not an issue anymore. We'll revert that back to our launch, and we'll fix this and see if I can identify what the issue was. Oh, I remember what the issue was. I remember what it was now. Perfect. Well, at least we don't have to spend a bunch of time re-evaluating that. The issue was that our liquid-fueled stage was underpowered. So if we look at the ISV, or rather the ISP of these swivels. These swivels here. No, not these are swivels. Is it just me, or is this model substantially different? Well, isn't that exciting? There was definitely an update to something. And yeah, these are now having the same bug in the VAB as they were in the actual game. So that's kind of both good and bad, I suppose. So these swivels. What do we got here? We've got an ISP of 250 to 320. Now, if we were to replace those with vectors, it's not really the ISP that we care about with the vectors. With the vectors, it's the fact that they have so much more thrust. 215 vacuum kilonewtons. So we should assume that this is basically 5 times as much thrust. So if we remove these swivels and we put on a pair of vectors instead, like so, we're going to need to thrust limit this to about 21% or so. 21.5 is what we would need, actually, to match the thrust of our swivels. So if we want to double this, of course, we'll just take it up to 43. So this would double the thrust. That's probably more than we need, and I'm actually going to try this at 30% thrust. So let's go ahead and launch this. We'll have to deal with the solar panels. We don't want to have too much thrust in these engines. Too much thrust is absolutely a bad thing here, and these vectors are absolutely capable of too much thrust. Actually, just for hilarity and entertainment purposes, should we do a run here with it at maximum thrust? I kind of feel like we should. It would be entertaining, I feel like. It would be, you know, another very fancy explosion. We've been having a few of those, but not for a while. So you know what? Let's just bump these up to 100% thrust and see what happens. I am prepared for hilarity to ensue. Let's go. Okay. So we'll lift off about like so. Ah, yes. Our staging is wrong. So that's step one, is we need to fix our staging. We definitely need to fix our staging. We very definitely need to fix our staging. Okay, so back to launch. We'll fix our staging here. We're wasting a lot of fuel right now with our staging being the way it is. And of course it's that way because I swapped out the engines and didn't fix the staging. So we'll just get all of this good to go. Fix that staging. Okay. Solar panels are good to go. These are burning here. They should be burning here. Throttle up. Prepare for liftoff. Hilarity ensues. Hilarity indeed. Hilarity indeed. I imagine our thrust to weight here is ridiculous. 1.6 actually. That's not... Oh, we're still on 30% thrust limiter. I didn't actually intend to do that. And I didn't check to see if those had fuel in them. I should have checked to see if they had fuel in them. I wasn't intending this to be a serious flight. So I guess here we are. I mean, we're definitely in a poor attitude here. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, and then we're going to tumble from the poor attitude. So we're going to revert that back to launch. I want to try that out. 30% does feel about right. But I didn't intend for that to remain at 30%. I promised you guys a fiery explosion, and I'm going to deliver. Actually, I'm not, because we're on no crash damage because of this bug, but I just want to know exactly what's going to happen with this. That's what I want, is to know exactly what this feels like at full thrust. It will be hilarious. I'm quite sure of this. Throttle up. And we need to move these down. And let's try to take off a little bit. Wow, that's very speedy. Look at that shake. Look at that shake. Okay. As I said, this is way too much. This is way too much thrust. We can't even maintain attitude. Well, that was a nice flip. We're already dry on all of these tanks, by the way. Oh, here we go again. Does our liquid fuel last until our SRBs are gone? That's the question. I mean, we're going to hit the water here. There go the SRBs. Liquid fuel out. Yeah, we're completely dry. This is not shocking to me. This is not shocking at all. This is not how we want to do this, right? So let's hop on back to the Space Center, or rather to the VAB. And we are... I wonder what happens if we leave these extended. I'm going to try that. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to put these at 30. I want to fix our staging. Okay. So this is just slightly more powerful than what we had before. Not by a huge margin, but a little bit more powerful. Now, in theory, I believe our specific impulse is fairly similar with these engines and the swivel. Okay, so leaving those extended in the VAB didn't really do anything. But maybe if we have them start extended, we might actually be able to skip a step here. Okay, SAS on. Throttle up. Get to 90 degrees. Let's go. So we'll take off here in a moment. There we go. Off go our mites. We've definitely got an issue with attitude control here. There's no doubt about that. Once again, I didn't check those to make sure that they were burned out, but seeing how quickly this is burning out, I'm pretty sure they were burned out. What is our current apoapsis? Looking semi-reasonable. Okay, so we're just carrying these empty tanks for a little bit here. This is fine. Thrust to weight, 1.6. That is a beautiful thrust to weight. Just trying to adjust our heading a little bit here. I want to pitch nose up as well. And just hold about here. How are we doing on these tanks? We are draining them evenly. So that's good. Very good to see that. Okay, our strap-on tanks are going to be ditched here in a moment. I did notice there was a pretty hard hit from one of our tank detachments earlier that may have taken out this wing if we weren't in the no damage mode. So that's definitely something to consider. Let's watch this detachment. That looked fairly smooth, but it was close. It was very close. We're definitely moving quite quickly here. Thrust to weight is currently 2.7. We just went into orbital mode, and we're going to pop over to prograde at this time. And we're just going to pop our apoapsis up to somewhere around 100 kilometers. Wonderful. And let's see how that ends up going. We definitely want to change our timing on that. That'll do. Something along the lines of that. Now, this is claiming to be quite a long burn, but it won't actually be as long as it looks. We just don't have a lot of fuel left in here. There's no doubt about that. We'll go ahead and head over to that maneuver node and extend our solar panels at this time. I should have an action group for that. And let's begin our burn here. Okay. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to get us into orbit again. And the reason for that is because we're just a little shy on fuel for what we're asking of this. We're asking a lot of this spacecraft, to be clear. We're asking a whole lot. Perhaps too much. Perhaps too much. So, I mean, we're just going to continue burning here. I'm going to go ahead and physics warp this and see how well we end up doing. I mean, once again, if we burn to the apoapsis like this, burning essentially prograde, and then once we hit the apoapsis, we go back to radial out, we should, in theory, be fine here. You'll note our apoapsis dropping and our periapsis coming up. That said, we're pretty shy on our orbital speed. So there is that. We would want quite a lot of orbital speed still. And actually, our orbital speed is coming up pretty quick. Quicker than I expected, anyway. I mean, we're going back in. There's no doubt. No doubt about it. And this isn't quite going to work. So we're going to revert that back to the spaceplane hangar, and we're going to think about maybe squeaking a little bit more performance out of these vectors. Overall, I felt like thrust to weight was good. Were we wasting fuel over here? That's something I actually want to check. Let's try this again. Check our timings and make sure we're not wasting any fuel. I don't think we're wasting fuel. I want to make sure we're burning evenly. I want to make sure that we're not wasting fuel, because if we're dropping fuel with these timings, then our timings will need to change. And let's go ahead and, oh yeah, I wanted to extend those in the VAB to skip this step. That's something I should do, for sure. Okay, I'm now going to turn this off. And what we're going to do here is just hold this attitude. SAS on. We're going to pin open the outer fuel tanks over here. I'm going to turn brakes on for now. This is an outer fuel tank as well. And then inner fuel tanks. There's just the T800. And then, or rather that was the central fuel tanks. And then the inner fuel tanks will go here. So that has the T800 and the T400. And then we'll also pin open the fuselage, which doesn't actually have all that much fuel in it, but it has some. And it has, does it have any up here? No. Okay. Sounds good. So we'll throttle up, and we'll give this a go. Draining evenly. We're going to be lifting off momentarily. Okay, that was not a great liftoff as far as liftoffs go. And we'll just try to hold here. Oh, I didn't even look. I'll have to check the recording to see if we're burning unevenly here. Okay. I don't like burning unevenly. So that one's out of liquid fuel, and now we're burning the other side. But I guess it's okay. So we're going to have to hold here. Yeah, we definitely wasted some fuel previously. And that means that we've got some wasted thrust-to-weight ratio here. And that's because these aren't draining evenly necessarily. Okay, we'll ditch those. There was a small explosion there. We're fine. That does not affect the current test. I don't know why those inner ones don't drain evenly. Kind of odd. I wonder if there are controls for that I don't know about somewhere. Let me know in the comments if that's true. So we're a little lower than where we would normally be. I want a little bit more horizontal speed this time. And you can see here we are getting some decent thrust to weight and getting some good speed rolling. So that's great. What's our current apoapsis? 30 kilometers. And we're still doing fine with our fuel here. Our underslung fuel tanks are still going okay. We're going to be ditching these in a few seconds here. You can see that the nose has been slowly drifting upwards, and that's to be expected as we've got these tanks. But we ditched those tanks. Small explosion there, but we're fine. Apoapsis of high enough. We're going to hop over to prograde now. And we're just going to hold prograde here. Okay. And let's cut our throttle at this point. We want to make our way down to the horizon and just be getting horizontal speed. So we'll just hold right around here. And burn out the rest of what we've got. And we'll just get ourselves some sweet, sweet horizontal speed. Wonderful. You can see at this point we are 18 kilometers above our apoapsis target, so I'm actually going to flip us up to here, and we're going to need to extend our Gigantors before we run out of electric charge. Almost forgot about that one. There we go. This is a little more up than I wanted. I actually want to be burning basically here. Actually, no, I want to be burning basically here. Radial prograde. That's what I want. Just a little bit more time here. In not orbit, but in space. Okay, we're at 130. Let's just go ahead and flip it on over to prograde. We can get a lot of altitude out of this, and that's kind of our benefit in terms of being able to orbit with a very low thrust engine system like this. We could even aim for a higher apoapsis if we wanted to and try to circularize in the large amount of time that would give us. It's an interesting concept, to be sure. We do need a fair amount more speed here. And we're working on it. That sweet 0.15 thrust to weight ratio. I just want to double check that we don't have any extra fuel in here. Yeah, we don't. No dead weight over there. That's great. And I mean, these wings are dead weight at this point, but they won't be later on. We're about to hit apoapsis now, so we should probably go ahead and switch to radial out at this time. Okay, there we go. So now you can see our apoapsis is dropping. We have 37 kilometers of pad, and our periapsis is coming up. The question is, by how much? And the answer is not very much. I mean, it's definitely interesting, right, that we managed to get this far, and even that we managed to get into orbit previously. That's very interesting. But ultimately not really feasibly reproducible in any sort of measurable way. So that's definitely something to note. We could aim for a higher apoapsis to give ourselves more circularization time, like I said. It's an option, but I think I would rather have a little bit more, not necessarily power, in our first stage. Although, we're probably going to have to crank up our vectors a little bit. But more specifically, what I'm really interested in right now is having additional delta V in that stage. That's going to be what we're going to need. So, I mean, we'll keep burning this until we hit Atmo and see what we end up getting. You can see here our apoapsis has dropped pretty dramatically. And once we get that down to about 100 kilometers, that'll be fine to switch back to prograde. Not that it'll help us. Okay, we'll switch it back to prograde. We're going to be heading back into the atmosphere very soon here. And you can see here, we're still a couple hundred meters per second short of what we need in order to actually be in orbit. It was a close thing, though. A very, very close thing. And yeah, now we're back in Atmo, and things are going to go bad very, very quickly. So let's revert this back to the spaceplane hangar, and let's just think. How can we get additional delta V? And I'm actually going to extend these. There we go. How can we get additional delta V out of these vectors? Well, that's going to require additional fuel, right? How are we going to get additional fuel on here? Well, we can remove these fleas and have these be purely fuel tanks. That's something that we can do. We can have, say, T400s back here in mirror symmetry mode. It's very, very hard to get these to actually attach. It's almost like the VAB wasn't designed for this or something. Okay, like that. There we go. So that gives us some extra T400s. In order to have sufficient thrust to weight here. Let's go ahead and increase our thrust limiter to about 35%. Okay, something kind of like that. Now, I'm interested in moving our attachment point here slightly this way. That was too much. We need to turn snapping off. But somewhere around... not there. Somewhere around there for clipping purposes and detachment purposes. Okay. So something like that. I would love it if we could have some way to make use of the liquid fuel that we have available here. We could have up to 600 plus 80, so 680 liquid fuel in these wings. We have no way to use that. Unless we were to put on nuclear engines. That would be the only effective way. Nuclear engines down here would be likely to be clipped off, but they wouldn't provide so much thrust that they would push us off course, I wouldn't think. So if we were to increase our... if we were to give this 680 liquid fuel here... apparently I can't interact with these anymore. Wonderful. Okay, so if we were to have 680 liquid fuel in these, that's dead weight right now. And we still have these solid fuel boosters, but I actually am thinking about maybe just putting in atomic motors here. So just a pair of nerves. Now, unfortunately, nerves are extremely long. I'm concerned about them being clipped off on takeoff. I'm definitely concerned about that. However, I do want to put a quick test in here, and also a cut after this test. It is time for that. So while we're loading here, I will say you can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and let's just see. The only thing I'm really interested in here is, and I'm probably going to run a more complete test here, but the main thing I'm interested in... well, that happens, but we knew that would happen. The main thing that I'm interested in here is reverting that back to launch and checking to see if those atomic engines get clipped off when we lift off. So we're going to have to do this. Load it on in. Interesting. We need to re-extend them again? I definitely had them extend in the VAB. I'm quite positive of that. Okay, now we're going to need to turn all that off. And we're going to need to do SAS on, throttle up, and check all of that. Fantastic. Liquid fuel deprived. Okay, so all we'll check here is if they get clipped off on takeoff. I think they will. Takeoff takes a little longer. Yep, there they go. Okay, so we'll have to think about that. However, that is a job for next episode. I'll see you all next time.